is involved in every aspect of the race. Nobody knows the race better than Cliff Bosley.
Yeah, well, it's weird because when it got started, I was 12, and I have 2 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters, and we all had been involved in some form or fashion, running, volunteering, or working. Just right at on the right side, right at the finish line. Somebody said, "What would you do if you weren't doing the Boulder Boulder on Memorial Day?" And I don't know that I could do anything else. The Boulder Boulder is what we do on Memorial Day. You guys did a good job. Thanks.
The Bosley family, the race staff, they've set a certain level of expectations and standard that I think we all want to be part of. It's an amazing organization. Everything works well. People just want to be part of something like that anymore.
Can I show you?
We look at every single thing and say, is there a better way to do this? Cliff doesn't say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, let's fix it anyway.
Yeah, see, we got your banners here. You've heard the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think Steve's saying, if it ain't broke, we're fixing it, because there's a better way to do it.
And every year, Cliff and the team do such a great job of putting on such a dynamite experience that at the end of the day, it is about customer experience.
And I think the race is set up technically so that if you're a 8-minute a mile runner, or if you're a 12-minute a mile runner, that you still get the same respect and you get the same benefits of some of the best race management in the world. And that's for the first runner and that's for the last runner, and they care just as much. I mean, that's one thing that's so important about the Bosleys and the race organization, and it trickles down to, and it's been trickling down for 35 years, that everybody is important.
I hope we get to keep doing it, and I hope, well, 35 years from now, I won't probably be the guy sitting here, so, but whoever it is, I hope there's someone sitting here saying, yeah, it's still a big deal.
There's a pretty good chance that you recognize this guy. Frank Shorter, along with the Bosley family, started the Boulder Boulder back in 1979. At mile 5.9, this statue symbolizes to races that are almost to the finish line. Metal Frakes stands along with the bagpipers every single Memorial Day to motivate runners all the way to the finish line. We hope that they motivate you to come back in 90 seconds after break.
The Boulder Boulder, presented by Crocs, is brought to you by Crocs, making the world more comfortable, and by King Soopers.
Yeah, you come around, you finish, the stadium is just packed with people, it just rolls.
You can't beat that energy. That's just so much. I mean, no matter how tired you are climbing that hill, you just sprint around that field, and it's just a ton of fun. I think the energy is what keeps people going.
Oh, that's really, really energizing, just like powering through. You got everyone, you don't even know them. It's just really cool having them all cheer you on and stuff.
And there's not very many situations like that in running outside of the Olympics. Because once you experience it once, I've never heard anybody say, oh, I ran the Boulder Boulder, I didn't have a good time. You always want to put that on the schedule.
Welcome back to the coverage of the 35th running of the Boulder Boulder, presented by Crocs. And onto the best part of the race, the finish line. Finishing at Folsom Field on the University of Colorado's campus makes every racer feel like an Olympian. And I happen to know Olympians who know.
We hope it always feels like this.
And you know that once you hit the ground floor of the stadium, everyone's going to cheer for you. And in a way, right now, it just dawns on me that other than in the Olympic Games, there are very few situations like that where you have a true entry into the stadium. Now, there are stadium finishes in races, but it's more like, okay, everybody goes in and everyone finishes. The way they've arranged it so that the first finishers come and cycle through and then become the fans for the next finishers. That's unique in any road race, anywhere.
The finish line is where a lot of goals are finally realized. All the training and hard work has paid off. And every single individual runner here has a story on how it all began.
I had just graduated from high school and I was considered very overweight, extremely obese, tipping the scale at 270 pounds. Then a few years later in college, my sophomore year, one of my friends had challenged me to step outside of my comfort zone and train for a 10K with him. I could not run a half a mile without getting completely winded. And that's when I gave up training for a while because self-doubt took over. And then it wasn't until I was watching an episode of The Biggest Loser one night and saw Michael Ventrilla training to lose all of his weight. And he had run a 5K at about 400 pounds without stopping. And that's when I realized I can do this. I picked up training, changed my diet, and before I knew it, I was running 3 miles without stopping, and then it became 4, and then it became 5. So race day, I had my doubts of whether I was gonna be able to run all 6 miles without stopping. The race started, I was going just fine. I kept having to remind myself, I can do this, I can do this. And I made it all the way through the whole entire course without stopping, and I actually finished 30 minutes ahead of my projected time. When I crossed the finish line, I remember a whole rush of emotions coming over me. It was tears of joy, tears of, oh my God, I just did this. I have lost total to date 126 pounds, and I haven't stopped since. So after my first Boulder then, I made it a mission in the years to follow to run all of the races thereafter. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to run the 2012 Boulder in Boulder, but I was in the Caribbean during that time. And so on race day, Memorial Day, I woke up that morning and ran the track around the ship to equal a 10K. Now it's this year and I will be running it with my mom, so it'll probably be the most memorable race in my eyes because she's been my cheerleader my whole entire life. She's been there in my lowest of moments of, oh my God, like, why am I doing this? I'm excited.
While Hannah and her mom are hoping to start an annual ritual of running, another family is using the Boulder to preserve a tradition and as a way toward healing.
Right before 1979 Boulder run, my wife decided she wasn't very athletic. She says, I want to do something like that. I want to get out there and lose weight. And so she says, I'm going to start running. So she started running right at the beginning of 1979. So she ran for 2 or 3 months. So she decided, now that I've run 3 or 4 miles, my goal is to run my first race. It was the first Boulder, 1979. She says, that's going to be my first race. So I said, okay, if you run it, I'll run it with you, just so we can finish our first race together. That's how it all started. Just continued, she continued running, she became a runner. She was hooked on running. Her favorite race of all was the Boulder. She says, I'll never stop running that. And after the 10th year, Bosley decided, hey, we'll pay for you guys since you're the perfect 10. That's what they called us. We're going to call you the Boldest. We both ran every Boulder until in 2007 she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She ran for the 3 years. She said, my goal is just to finish it. I don't want to give up my status as a Boldest. So she ran it. We tried to discourage her. She says, nope, I'm going to run it. In 2010, she passed away in May 17th, 4 days before our 44th wedding anniversary, 10 days before the Boulder that she wanted to run real bad. We got together as a family. We said, what do we do? And we said, well, what would Mom want us to do? And my kid said, hey, if she was here, even if she was in a wheelchair, she would be running it. So we can't let her down. So we're going to run the Boulder. So that year, I laced up my shoes and I ran with a heavy heart, but I managed to finish it. It was easier the following year. We still run with a heavy heart, but it got a lot easier. And of course, this year, we're all decided, we're dedicating this race to Mary Lou. When Mary Lou was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, we just didn't know how long she was going to make it. So my daughter-in-law, Patty, took all of Mary Lou's old t-shirts and made a beautiful quilt.
The 10K race is only one part of the Boulder tradition. Up next, we'll show you another as we recap one of the largest Memorial Day celebrations in the nation.
The Boulder, presented by Crocs, is brought to you by Nissan, innovation that excites, and Newton Running.
Many members of the armed forces run in the Boulder Boulder to celebrate Memorial Day. Others, who have been deployed and can't be home to run the race, run overseas.
My name is Lieutenant David Swanson, and I'm Chaplain Captain Mike Demon. We just ran Boulder Boulder here at our FOB in Afghanistan.
The Boulder Boulder hosts 11 additional 10K races outside of Colorado. Organizers mail bibs and t-shirts to over 2,700 enlisted participants. 10K courses are mapped out in countries like Afghanistan or on Navy ships such as the USS Michael Murphy. The Boulder Boulder tries to include and honor those troops who cannot celebrate with their families back home.
Thanks, Boulder Boulder!
Back in Boulder, Colorado, over 100,000 runners and spectators gather at Folsom Field to pay tribute to the men and women who have served our country and given their lives fighting for freedom.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
During the Memorial Day tribute, Drs. Peter Steinhauer and Jim Chandler were honored for their work as life-saving surgeons during the Vietnam War.
But most important, I do really always honor Memorial Day. And it's for people who made much greater sacrifices than just being away from their family for a year.
Vietnam was a time when it affected everybody's life back then. You know, those that went there and survived, those that were wounded there, those that died there, those families that waited for their loved ones to come home. It took 58,000 lives, American lives, and it divided our country huge. We weren't involved in the killings and the atrocities and the jungle patrols and the bombings that are all part of warfare. We saw it from more of a human side. We were very blessed, you know, to be involved as healthcare providers with this.
Up next,
it's a USA team, and we all have a background with Colorado too, so that's what really excites me.
we'll meet one of the professional teams racing on Memorial Day with strong ties to the community.
The Boulder Boulder, presented by Crocs, is brought to you by First Bank, the home of free checking, and Einstein Brothers Bagels. Happiness made fresh daily.
Welcome back to the 2013 Boulder Boulder, and yet another great part of the day, the Men's and Women's International Team Challenge.
You don't get very many opportunities when you get out of school to experience a team race. And the Boulder Boulder kind of brings that back, which is a very unique type of event.
You know, it's a point system, and so you want to get the lowest point total you can, and that means your finishing place is your points. So if you finish 8th, you get 8 points for your team. So the goal is to get 3 guys across the line or 3 women across the line in as short order as possible.
If you are really struggling and some people like you're hurting, you want to drop out, or you just got to slow down a little bit, you have that team thing in the back of your mind that you can't let your teammates down. So you do run and dig down a little bit deeper.
So all of a sudden the team that maybe normally wouldn't beat some of the East African teams, which are always extremely talented and usually do pretty well, if one of those guys just happens to have a bad day, maybe he's a little bit too aggressive out there and doesn't perform as well as he should, all of a sudden you can sneak in there and maybe your team can beat Kenya or Ethiopia or Morocco.
Teams consist of 3 runners and come from around the globe to compete for the second largest non-marathon prize purse in the world. 7 teams lined up at the start line for the women's professional race. The Ethiopians, having won 3 of the last 4 years, are always the team to beat. Frank Shorter and Tim Cronin called the race.
They're off at the starting line. The teams will segment themselves nicely. We'll see that pretty quickly. And no surprise with the Kenyans and Ethiopians right to the front. Team Mexico off to the side. They're all together as a group.
When they call this a team challenge, we have a team challenge right here up front. 3 Kenyans, 3 Mexicans. Look at this.
So at the 2-mile point, Ethiopia is leading in the team score with 7 points. Kenya with 18, Mexico with 22.
Ethiopians are really pressing the pace, the Kenyans letting them do it. And now it's just a question to see who hangs on to this pace. Because they're going to, there, someone looks behind, she looks behind and says, okay, what's going on here?
And traditionally, the U.S. team has held back and come on from about mile 2.5 to 4.5, and I wouldn't expect a different strategy today. Marama Muhammad is really pushing the pace.
And the best example of someone really pushing the pace is that straight line. They're just lining up now, no one across the field, no one across the track. No one across the road. They're just, and at this point it is critical to stay in contact, and Madai Carrillo from Mexico is doing her best. This is the big break, folks, right at 3 miles. And they're now starting to run, but now it's a 2-woman race. But this could be the race right here, because she's pulling away pretty easily. And Carrillo is trying to stay with her. You don't intentionally let someone get that gap like that. You don't let them get that lead. But that's a significant lead, because this part of the course, heading back east down Spruce with a right-hand turn and then a left on Pearl Street, it's all gradual downhill. The effort you're using isn't all out. It's only, say, at 85, 90%, and you're getting this gap. Now you start to feel good. Marima Muhammad is coasting home. This is what you always want to have happen, to have a 50, 80-meter lead with less than a mile to go. She's probably at about the 9-kilometer point, less than 3 minutes away from the finish line, looking around and saying, well, I just have to get home.
On the stadium floor, let's bring her in. Marama Muhammad.
She made it look easy.
Marama Muhammad wins her first Boulder Boulder with a time of 33:50.